What brings you to Thailand, just to start?
I'm here for the first global forum on gender and media that UNESCO is putting on. I'm speaking about the role the media plays in terms of shaping opinion around gender and the value of journalism education in that context. So I'm going to be talking about the ways in which we can help journalism students become gender activists, essentially, and how to appropriately report on gender issues, but also to enable them to become aware of the impediments to progress in media organisations that face women with incredible levels of male domination in senior management ranks and also on the front line and in reporting, particularly in the main news game.
And how long have you been in Bangkok for?
I arrived in Bangkok on Saturday afternoon. So where are we? So 3 days. This is my third day. Look, where I am, which is at an international conference hotel on Sukhumvit, which is, the main one of the main hotel and tourist areas, it's quite calm. I've not even seen a protester or an obviously identifiable protester. My journey from the airport on Saturday afternoon was unimpeded. That said, this morning I actually started to hear whistles and loudspeakers in the distance. I've got no idea whether that's because the protesters are coming close or if it's completely unrelated. But what that kind of demonstrates to me is that we're all on, heightened awareness. We're on alert. And while the protests are very localised around government buildings and so on, and very serious, there have been, a number of deaths and injuries, and this is clearly a major political crisis. We're not yet in the situation where the entire city has been shut down, although that is being mooted, at least in terms of a government shutdown. So while UNESCO is being very quiet about safety precautions and so on, I understand that that certainly there are machinations in the background with regards to plans of action. And on top of that, I've received great advice from former colleagues at the ABC who are on the ground here in terms of what to do, what not to do, where not to go. And essentially that advice, which I'm following, for sensible reasons, involves staying relatively close to the hotel and avoiding major tourist attractions and avoiding metered taxis and that kind of thing.
And what's the security been like at the conference?
In the lead up to the conference, I've noticed it increasing in the past 24 hours. So, there are pretty flimsy barricades and security guards and that kind of thing starting to surround the building, not in any kind of great number, but certainly there as a sort of visual deterrent, I guess, and probably also to make us feel more comfortable about being there, to be honest. But this is it's a very significant global gathering of journalists and media activists and academics from around the world. In the foyer, it's literally like the United Nations. It's Africa, Asia, the Americas represented along with Europe and Oceania. So it's a pretty extraordinary event and probably a pretty pivotal time to be here.
And you mentioned speaking with former colleagues from the ABC. What's the sense among journalists and people visiting Bangkok about the protests? Is there fear there?
Well, I think rather than fear on the part of the journalists, there's concern and there's a sense of history repeating itself. There's, obviously a great affection for the people of Thailand and among those journalists who've lived here for some time. I've been following a number of journalists who've been recommended as long-term correspondents with credibility in terms of their tweeting activities and watching what they've got to say, and that's been quite interesting, quite very informational, very reliable, and also there's evidence there of deep concern for just the community in which they live. But of course, there is an undercurrent of the need for personal safety preservation and concern for others who might be less more unsuspecting, I suppose, in terms of the potential risk, because it's such an unusual situation in that it's very calm, on one block, and completely chaotic and highly dangerous on another block. There's that sense of uncertainty that I guess is being reflected back. With regards to tourists, my experience so far has been a sense of frustration about an absence of information about those kinds of risks, what to avoid and how to avoid those risks, I suppose just heightened concern and certainly some fear among the less experienced travellers, obviously.
And what impression do you have of how the protests have affected daily life of people living in Bangkok?
Well, I know, for example, that using the SkyTrain, which is sort of the elevated train, people have been able to move relatively freely about the city. But on the other hand, the public broadcaster, Thai PBS, was effectively seized, or at least was occupied yesterday. The police headquarters was under attack. Shopping centres were surrounded by protesters. So it's clearly having a major impact on many sectors and many sections of this society, of this city. But on the other hand, on this strip where I went to dinner last night and walked with some colleagues from UNESCO and the World Association of Newspapers, back to the hotel, we saw no evidence of anything but life going on as normal here.
And what's the general feeling about the future of these protests? How long do you expect they'll last?
Well, all I've got to go on is the reporting I'm seeing, and the Australian government is warning that they could go on for some time via their various channels of communication. But in talking to the journalists, it's likely this will go on for days. I don't think we're in the situation yet where airports are going to be closed in the next 48 hours. But we are facing a 2-day ultimatum that's been handed to the Prime Minister by the protesters. And there's a plan today for, a full government shutdown, a strike in effect. So I expect that the disruption and the chaos and the risk, will escalate, although I'm in no position to make a prediction about how quickly that will escalate, or how far it will go and ultimately what will happen.
And how much longer will you be in the city?
Well, I'm booked on a flight home on Thursday night, so assuming that I'm able to get to the airport and the airport's still open, that's when I'll be leaving, and I'll be, trying to monitor the situation as any journalist turned academic wants to do in the context of attending a very significant conference and trying to report on that. So, I suppose stay tuned to my tweets and various feeds, and I'll let you know how I'm going in days to come.
Absolutely, we will. Thank you so much for your time, Julie.
Thank you.